Well, to zone in onto one of those certainties being death, we look at South Africa's death rate, which is nearly double the global average, and 6 of the 10 countries with the highest death rates are in Africa. This is according to the CIA World Factbook. I'm going to find out now how lucrative the funeral industry is at the moment, and with the help of Lawrence Konyana, President of the National Funeral Directors Association of Southern Africa. Good to have you with us today, sir. I think you're going to enlighten the minds of many investors today to actually look at the business case for funeral homes. So often we think that your business is just straightforward, but there is an opportunity here to make a return on investment.
Well, many people think that, hence I think you'll see nowadays we have even a lot of illegal operators within the industry, because there is that perception that there is a lot of money in the business. People are dying every day, especially with a surge of AIDS, HIV, AIDS. People thought there's a lot of people dying, but unfortunately it's not that. You can ask a lot of funeral parlors and they will tell you, because even their overheads are quite high in the business. I'm sure you've seen their vehicles that we use, the facilities that you need to have. But unfortunately there are those who get away with the simplest, like I said, your illegal operators, what we call sort of a fly-by-nights.
Tell us about them, because it almost seems as though this is where the regulatory aspect of things needs to come into play.
Look, unfortunately, there's no license per se for funeral directors. The only thing that the health department issues, it's a certificate of competence, as you saw in the COC. In the insert they mentioned, we normally refer to it as the COC, and that pertains to the mortuary premises, not the funeral director themselves. Like in other countries where funeral directors are trained or have to go through a certain course or for a number of years, like in the US, they have to do mortuary science in order to qualify as a funeral director. But here at home, fortunately or unfortunately, you don't have to go through that. It's just a question of if you've got money, you buy vehicles, you buy premises, and you comply. But unfortunately we have a lot of people who don't comply, and that has been a problematic, because enforcement, unfortunately there is lack of enforcement. Although there are regulations, unfortunately they're split. There's some in the health, some in home affairs, so they are there and there, but unfortunately enforcement thereof is what we lack in this country.
Is there also a misconception that funeral directors are also qualified or regular financial advisors and financial service providers, because often you purchase a package and they are expected to meet that, and sometimes the consumer gets what they want and sometimes they don't?
Yeah, look, some funeral directors now, most of them now, they sell funeral insurances, and you have to apply through the FSB, get your FSP certificate so that you can sell funeral insurance.
Realistically speaking, how many of them actually have accreditation from the FSB?
To be honest, not many, but some do try. And, unfortunately, those who do try to be compliant, those are the ones that are napped, in most instances. And those who decide not to register at all, they always get away, unfortunately. And it's a sore point to many who are registered, because they see it as, once you are registered with the FSB, now they are on your case. Whereas if you're outside their loop, you'll probably be doing much better.
Well, those that refer to local regulations, what about from a Pan-African perspective or international regulations? We had the situation where in Nigeria, the church collapsed and there were several bodies that needed to be brought back to the country. That took almost 2 months. Was that not necessarily an opportunity for members of your organization to step up and render their services?
Well, most of us, we wanted to render the services, but I think the government handled it, and they handled quite well, repatriating those bodies back home here. We will have assistance. We wanted to actually assist, but unfortunately there was a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy. So, we only handled the bodies once they had arrived in the country. Most of them went to different areas, and with that came strict rules, but their families were briefed, in terms of health issues, that the bodies shouldn't be opened, such things. But unfortunately, sometimes in our culture and the communities, the families, they want to watch the body, they want to see the body, and sometimes it's a bit difficult when you have to, but they were briefed. But there were instances where families were, I don't know, should I say, taking a chance or whatever, and then you will have to be stern and say, look, this is what we have to follow. And it's unfortunate that it happens now, which is something that should be happening throughout, where government has communication with the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just from a cultural perspective, oftentimes black individuals are known to fork out a lot more on funerals. Is that the case, and are things changing? We saw the gravesite there with exorbitant tombstones.
Well, on the inside, I don't know how many black names you saw there, but I don't think it's true. It's just that, you know, we tend to look, mostly in black communities, you will use a hearse, you will use family cars, and your family cars, if you are an outstanding funeral director, you will want to use your Mercs or your expensive cars or whatever. Whereas in the white community, you know, they will most of the time they will use only a hearse, or they will cremate or something like that. But you know, funeral costs in this country, they're not that high compared to other. Actually, we
On
are
average,
very
how
low.
much do we spend?
Well,
50,000?
look, an average funeral is just under 10 grand for a basic funeral, depending where you are. In the rural areas, it tends to be a bit cheaper sometimes because they don't pay for graves. You know, they don't pay for a lot of things. But in the urban areas, you know, the graves are expensive. The distances that you have to travel to the cemeteries.
I'll tell you what, this is a conversation that I think Dumisho Greater would like us to continue on another day, but thank you so much for your time today, sir, for sharing your insights with us. That was Lawrence Konyana, President of the National Funeral Directors Association of South Africa.